School. I'm your host, Elijah Fields. I'm joined today by Megan Lewis. She's a very decorated swimmer. And actually, I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm from Dayton, went to Xenia High School, obviously, and I was a competitive swimmer for 15 years. So that is the sport that actually helped me get into the Hall of Fame for Xenia. I swam for 15 years, started at the age of 7, so I'm all the way through college at the University of South Carolina. And then upon graduating, went into coaching swimming for 3 years and then kind of transitioned into a whole new adventure. But as far as it goes with my swimming career, I competed at the 2012 Olympic trials. That was going into my senior year of high school. I qualified towards the end of my junior year, and then the 2012 was the summer before my senior year. Then when I went on to swim at the University of South Carolina, I competed at all 4 SEC championships with my team and dabbled in a lot of different events, but the 400 IM, if anyone knows the world of swimming, was my main event.
But what Megan also is a fanatic in, I give her a lot of credit for how she's able to make transitions. I think just reading up on her and everything, that we've discussed, the reason that she's here today is because she essentially went from one power lifestyle to another. She's now a power lifter at a very high level. She's in the bodybuilding. So Megan, kind of talk about that a little bit. Talk about your transitional period of, you come from being this decorated college swimmer, and then there's that in-between period.
That in-between period is definitely was a hard time. It's not a time that I expected to fully experience, as hard as it was. Going from being an athlete at such a high level, or even just an athlete, at any level, and then transitioning into a whole new lifestyle is incredibly challenging. And it's not something that athletes are really it's not really discussed with the athlete as that transition time is coming. So upon my retiring from swimming, I really, really struggled to find what was next for me, for my own individual self, career aside, all of that kind of stuff aside. When it came to me and my personal endeavors and my personal passions, I felt so lost. I had identified as a swimmer for 15 years. And then once I retired, that identity kind of just felt like it was essentially just ripped away. It was gone in, the snap of the fingers. And so I struggled to find what was next for me as an individual. I struggled to find, what do I enjoy doing outside of swimming? I actually transitioned into, focusing on more powerlifting movements with my weight coach from college. That was just while I was still at school before I moved. And then when I moved to Texas for my first career post-college, I started CrossFit, which that one lasted for about a year or two. I loved it because of the intensity level. It almost gave me the same feeling that swimming gave me when it came to the intensity of it. But it just didn't stick. It wasn't something that fueled the fire like swimming did within me. Tried to force myself to like running, and nothing stuck until almost 2 years ago when I found the sport of bodybuilding. I was transitioning out of being a swim coach into starting my own personal training and nutrition business. And during this time, I had my own nutrition coach who was a bodybuilder herself. And so it kind of opened me up to this whole new world. And, I found that the biggest piece of myself that I was missing over these last 3 years that I just was trying to reach and grab was my competitive side. I'm an incredibly competitive person. And from the time I touched the wall at the very end of my last race, the competitiveness in me kind of also went away a little bit, just because I didn't know what else to compete in.
You said some really good stuff there. I want to kind of backtrack to 2 things you said. Mm-hmm. First thing is something I agree with it's very hard to force yourself to like running. Like, I think the people enjoy running. I have a guest on, his name's Daniel Mahalski. That's what he does for a living, his runs. I'm gonna have to talk to him and see what he did there mentally to get that. Like, how do you run for that long? Secondly, is you talked about the feeling you had when your feet touched the wall for the last time. In that moment, like, just walk us through that moment, because literally everything you'd been training for, like, led up to that moment.
I mean, literally the second I touched the wall at the end of my last race, I was crying. Like, I think I was probably crying before I even finished. But I touched the wall and I mean, instant tears. I actually have a photo that like the professional photographer that's at SEC's snapped of me. And you can just see the like raw emotion that I'm feeling within that moment. So, you know, the biggest thing is I touched the wall and I just instantly felt, you know, it was sadness. It was also like everything that I had known for 15 years, who I was, how I built myself, like, was concluded in this moment. It wasn't until recently that for myself that I realized, you know, what this is really about is, yes, my career as a swimmer was complete in that moment, but my career and who I am as an athlete is forever lasting. And that's actually a realization that I came to during the Hall of Fame initiation, during my initiation into that Hall of Fame, which was in December of 2020 or 2021. It's 2022. And it was because, you know, there were all these other athletes that were being inducted, and some of them were from even like the 60s or the 70s. I mean, there was, you know, a baseball team, I think it was from the 60s that was inducted. And, you know, people were giving their speeches, and every single one common trait within each was that their sport or their coaches or their teammates helped shape them into who they are and continue to be. And it was in that moment that, you know, I kept trying to, you know, tell myself, okay, who am I without swimming? What's my identity? That I realized it's okay to continually identify as an athlete, because 15 years is a huge chunk of life. 15 years is a huge portion of who we are. And especially, you know, if you started at a young age, those developmental years. And so it was in that moment that I realized, okay, I'm okay to continue to identify with that part of myself. That's always going to be a part of who I am. I'm just going to continue to grow from that.
Honestly, I think what you said is like very spot on. Like, I really didn't see a false note anywhere. It's like, there's always one common thread that no matter what sport you play, it combines you as an athlete. And, you know, part of the reason, like, I'm glad, you know, you decided to be on is you have a brand that's very unique. You know, obviously you talked about your powerlifting business and your personal training business, but in your brand, when I was selecting people to be on the show, I noticed that you emphasize, you know, when you're talking, what it's like to be a retired athlete. You cater to that audience. And honestly, talk about the mental health of just no longer kind of like, you know, when the clock hits 0-0, like when everything is over, when it's just you and your thoughts, like just kind of talk about, you know, things you would normally promote as being a retired athlete.
So when it comes to, you know, the mental health side and the transition from being an athlete to a retired athlete, I think the biggest thing, you know, for me, and that I find connects with a lot of other retired athletes, is the feeling of loss within ourselves. So feeling lost as an individual, you know, we're constantly reaching now for the next thing that we're going to connect with. So that was a huge reason why I started my business, was to help retired athletes find what they now need for their new lifestyle. So that confusion, that loss, and that frustration, one, doesn't have to last as long as it did for me, which was a little over 3 years. And two, so they know that they're not alone. You know, as athletes, we always want to try to do things on our own. We want to try to solve our own problems. And in return, it does cause us to feel like, okay, I'm the only one going through this. when in reality, there is a whole community of retired athletes who are probably experiencing and feeling those same things.
Honestly, anyone listening to this, I would definitely encourage that you give Megan a look on Instagram because, like I said, she has a lot of great stuff. One thing that I want to get into is you mentioned earlier that you love, like you thrive on competition. In your opinion, what is the art of sport or what is the art of competing?
So I think my answer to that now is much different than it would have been as I was a college athlete. I would say, the art of competition is against yourself, competing against yourself. Even if you're involved in a team sport, both sports that I have partaken in were individual sports. Yes, you're on a team, but you compete individually. You race as an individual. Yes, when you're racing, you're helping to score points for your team. With bodybuilding, when you're up on stage and you're competing under your team's name, all of that kind of stuff, but it's still you as an individual. But regardless of that, I think, the art of competition comes down to understanding and knowing that you are bringing your best possible self. Not comparing yourself to others, not looking at someone else's journey and then looking at your own and going, okay, how are they the same? How are they different? Is it going to get me to the same point that person X got to? It's all in on you and focusing on, okay, am I doing what I can to bring my best possible self?
It's awesome. And I honestly, I agree with that because as athletes, we're taught that, win, win, win. When in reality, it's like, do you win all the time? There's still something that you still strive for. So I feel like I agree with what you said. Just bring the best possible version of yourself that day. I agree with that 100%. If you could talk about your mental health involvement. I know your sister personally. She's really good about mental health, taking care of the mind. But just talk about on all three levels. So high school, college, and then now as a retired athlete, turn powerlifter. Talk about how your mental health as an athlete has evolved.
Oh, here we go. So we'll start with high school, like you said. I'd probably say, leading up to my, it kind of came in phases. So during my high school career, I was pretty strong mentally when it came to my sport. I would set my mind to something. When I was 14 years old is when I set the goal to make 2012 Olympic trials. I remember I told my parents, I said, I'm going to compete at the 2012 Olympic trials. I'm going to qualify. Fast forward to 3 years later, and I did just that. So my mental health in that portion was really strong. I felt very confident within myself. I believed in the goals that I had for myself, and what I set my mind to, I achieved. Then come my senior year of high school, things really took a turn. My mental health, when it came to my belief within myself, really started to suffer. I stopped attaining or reaching the goals that I had set out for myself. I would set goals for myself and I would just miss them. That really started to weigh on me, and it started to make me feel as though, I wasn't enough, that I wasn't capable anymore, and all of that kind of stuff. And it really then took a toll and transitioned into my college career as well. My freshman year, I had a great freshman season. I hit new personal best times. Things felt great. Then come sophomore year, I hit, I don't know what it was again, but I didn't achieve the goals that I had set out for myself. And going into my junior year, that continued in. I really, really struggled. And I started to see a sports psychologist to help me try to gain some perspective and tools to help me build my mental side, because physically I was on it. I had kick-ass practices. I trained like a champion. I would swim faster in practice and I would compete in meets. And that is so that made it then even harder on myself. It's like, okay, I went 2 seconds faster in practice yesterday than I did while competing at this meet. And really what it came down to was I just had no belief in myself. I would set goals, and in the back of my head, I would go, yeah, but what if you don't achieve them? And, in my time with working with a sports psychologist, the biggest thing that we focused on was taking the negative thoughts and then turning them into positives. So if I'm thinking, okay, well, what if I don't achieve it? It would be, I'm going to achieve it, and it's because of this. And so I was practicing those things and, trying to shift the mindset and shift the negative thoughts to positive thoughts. And then but it wasn't until my junior year at SECs, I was racing my 400 IM. And it was in that moment, because I was right before I hopped up on the block, I was practicing the positive self-talk of, you can do this, you have earned this, you deserve this, you've worked hard for this. It was in the middle of my race that all of that went rushing out, and I went, no, I can't. Like, I can't achieve what I want. I don't deserve this. I haven't worked, like, all these different things. And it was in that moment that I realized, while I was telling myself all of these positive things, I didn't believe a single thing that I was saying. And yes, we can tell ourselves things, but what it comes down to is the actual belief in what we're saying. And it wasn't until that moment that I realized, I don't believe anything I've been telling myself over these last 6 months. Everything that I've been trying to feel better about, I have not once believed in. And that was kind of an awakening, not only for me, but my coach. I owe a lot to one of my college coaches who took the time my summer going into my senior year to really redefine everything that I essentially knew. We fixed my strokes. We changed up my training regimen. We fixed the way I viewed training. And it's because of that my senior year, I was more confident. I believed in what I was telling myself, and I had a great end to my career. And so that's the mental health side and the aspect from high school through college. And now my mindset has shifted even more so into my adult life and post-retirement and into bodybuilding. And it's because of bodybuilding that I feel even stronger when it comes to my mental health when it related to sport. And so bodybuilding has helped me to show that. And it's because within my bodybuilding training, I train to muscle failure, meaning I put a weight on the bar and I have a set amount of reps, range, let's just say 8 to 12. And if I'm going for a PR, I'm going to shoot for that 12. I'm going to shoot for the highest rep range possible, but I could fail at 9. But even though I failed at 9, I have never done that weight at any other rep amount before. And so that has helped shift and change my mindset around failure. Instead of viewing it as a negative and feeling down on myself for maybe not achieving something, I view it as, wow, I failed at 9 this time. I couldn't even have gotten 6 the last time I tried this. And so now I use failure to my advantage, and I use it to fuel me and help me get stronger and stronger every day.
Honestly, that part is like, poetry snap. Because literally, I hope everyone who's listening to this episode or just any other episode, if you don't take anything else from this, take what you just said. Don't fear failure. Like, you just gave a masterclass in literally the art of not fearing failure. So I really hope people grab onto that nugget. Now tell me pretty much what are you most thankful for now as a retired athlete? So now that you've had your battles with mental health, now that you've had, successes, failures, made friendships, met amazing people. I know as an athlete, you get to travel a lot. So having all that considered, what are you most thankful for in this moment right now, like as we sit down and talk?
I'd probably say, I'm the most thankful for my mind and my body that I have to be able to do this. I am fortunate to be able to live the lifestyle that I live. And it's because of my body that I have, the body that I live in, that I'm able to do it. So I'm incredibly thankful that I am fortunate enough to be able to live this lifestyle because of that.
I think what we often take for granted is the fact that we did complete that. Win, loser, indifferent, like we attempted it and then we have our outcome. I think that's sometimes what we forget as athletes, and some main time, like even as people. One thing I want to just touch on is, I know swimmers. So in my personal opinion, I know how swimmers train. Like, I know the hours and hours that go into essentially shaving off seconds. What lessons just in the sport of swimming have you held on to? And then how has that helped you? How has that kind of given you a little bit of an advantage in this next phase that you're currently in, which is powerlifting? Like, what nuggets from swimming has helped you in this current part of your life, lesson wise?
I'd probably say the dedication that it helped me to build. I was an incredibly dedicated swimmer. My life honestly revolved around it. I don't regret any of that, because it helped get me to where I got, and helped shape me into who I am. And so the lessons that I learned from swimming, as far as the dedication standard and the drive that it took, is really what I've carried with me throughout every aspect of my life. The drive that I have within my career, the drive that I have within my personal life, and the dedication around both. And then I think it gives me a bit of a one-up when it comes to bodybuilding. I wouldn't necessarily say a one-up, but I took it into bodybuilding with me, because bodybuilding is 100% a lifestyle. I'm fortunate enough to get to choose to live this lifestyle. And on top of that, I'm fortunate enough to have a very strong support system that allows me to live this lifestyle. My husband, my family, they all support me in this passion that I have, because especially with my husband, with it being my lifestyle, it does become a part of his lifestyle as well. And it really is, my days revolve around, or I have to take thought into what my bodybuilding career needs in order to be successful. So, the drive and the dedication that I had within swimming has 100% transitioned into bodybuilding. Dedication is what really helps me persevere forward. Motivation is fleeting. Motivation can come and go. It's the dedication that really continues to push us forward. And, knowing the dedication that I had as a swimmer has helped me to maintain that dedication into the sport of bodybuilding as well.
I got you. I like that. I like that answer a lot. Because sometimes people go from sport to sport and they just, like, again, it goes into the art of sport. It's all the same, but it's good that you were able to take, nuggets from something you loved and transition it into something that you are now learning to love. I have one last question for you, and then we'll get you out of here. See a lot of young people today. They often talk about how they want to be, how great they want to be, how they want to compete at the high levels. They want the moments. You've done that. So I want to know, like, what level of sacrifice did you have to make to achieve those successes at a high level?
Yeah. Sacrifice is a big word, and it is 100%, in my opinion, a necessity when it comes to goals that you have for yourself, whether they, high level goals in a career, high level goals within your personal life, high level goals within a sport. Sacrifice is going to have to come with it, because, we prioritize the things that we want most in life. And with prioritizing, the things that we don't necessarily prioritize as much are sacrificed a little bit. And, the sacrifices can change within each phase. And so when it comes to achieving, high level of whatever your goals might be, sacrifice is a necessity, and you have to be okay with it. My biggest thing is if surround yourself with people that are going to support you through those sacrifices, because, it can be incredibly lonely going after certain things that you want for yourself if you don't have a support system.
One last thing. This is the last thing, I promise.
It's fine.
I always like to end with this, because it's called More Than a Score. And I want to give every guest I have the opportunity to end this way. It doesn't have to be based on our topic. If there's any advice or any message you have on your heart or on your mind that you'd like to share with current, future, retired athletes, I would like you to go ahead and end that way. Just anything that you feel is on your mind or you feel like it's not talked about enough, just feel free to go ahead and share that.
Allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to absorb, and don't be afraid of those feelings. Don't be afraid of if you fail. Don't be afraid of if it's so challenging and you have to take a step back for a second to ensure that first you're in a healthy place to continue forward. And don't be afraid to just, keep pushing forward while listening to what your mind and your body are telling you, because they're both incredibly smart. And if you forget to give yourself some grace during this time, you're going to feel you're going to be battling with your internal self. You're going to be battling with the internal workings of your mind, with the internal workings of your physical self. And so every phase of life, give yourself some grace, give yourself some perspective to allow yourself to be your happiest, healthiest self so you can continue forward and continue to bring your best possible you.
That's an amazing way to end. I want to thank you again for coming on. Before we get off here, I encourage anyone who feels like they're stuck in that in-between point, please go check out her Instagram. It'll be posted somewhere, whether it be on Instagram, Facebook. It'll be posted. It may be posted in the link down below.
Thank you so much.